Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to 2CTV with the latest live update, this time from the European continent. The countries including Denmark and Sweden over the last day or two, they've been experiencing a number of attacks outside. First we had Denmark, Copenhagen, the capital, outside the Israeli embassy. Then we also heard from Stockholm in Sweden. These so-called isolated incidents are continuing to rise, and the authorities in both Denmark and Sweden have been doing a massive crackdown. They have arrested a number of people already, but in this video we're going to give you guys all the details on how the European leaders continue to let people down in their country. So if you're watching this live, we'll get your reaction as usual anyway. But also, massive thank you. We've gained another 3,000 subscribers since last night. We are now currently at 669,000. We're getting closer and closer to 700,000. And of course, the road to 1 million continues on 2CTV. Now, first, let's start by talking about Denmark. Following the Iranian regime and their declaration of war on Israel, which obviously followed by a number of ballistic missile attacks on the state of Israel, we obviously heard that the Islamic Republic and their sleeper cells around the Western world were put on alert, and we knew because in the UK, in Canada, in the US, and across the European Union, we have a huge number of sleeper cells that will be activated if the Islamic Republic gets desperate. But this isn't really that case anyway, because there are a lot of people, because of mass migration, that have come into Europe, and they've also had a lot of babies. So some of the terrorists could actually be second generation, could be born in Sweden, could be born in Denmark. So this was actually outside the Israeli embassy. That happened in Copenhagen, the first attack that we are talking about. The authorities said that nobody was injured. We are carrying out initial investigations at the scene. A possible connection to the Israeli embassy located in the area is being investigated. This was the initial response we had. And then we have a short video from Copenhagen following the attack. There were a number of shots were being heard, and also in terms of the explosions. We're going to talk about both sides, Stockholm and Copenhagen. But first, let's go to the video we have from Denmark. So as you can see this morning, they've been doing their investigation at the scene anyway. This is the map of where the Israeli embassy is located in Copenhagen, and where the residence of the Israeli ambassador is on the obviously southwest of the map. And they've said that a gun was recovered at the scene of 2 explosions just a few meters from the Israeli embassy in Copenhagen. So apparently they had bigger plans, but as usual they failed following the actual explosions. We will find out more about the identity of these people, because obviously they have said, according to the Danish police, they did announce earlier today that they have arrested 3 individuals linked to an investigation into the 2 explosions near the embassy in Copenhagen. We don't have much details yet. We are waiting for the authorities to finish their investigation, and I believe we can confirm this was not necessarily the Danish conservatives or Christians doing this anyway. We do know the Islamists have been sending out a lot of warnings in regard to the Israeli embassies around the Western world, and there were a number of witnesses who were also corroborating on that. Now, if we move to Sweden, because at the same time we also had another attack at the same time, shots fired in front of the Israeli embassy in Stockholm in Sweden, which was a little bit concerning because Despite the actual authorities and the security for the embassy keeping the staff safe and protected, and they did do a good job, there are also local people who live near the embassy in Stockholm. It's not too far from the other residential areas, and it's a little bit dangerous for the locals as well. We have just heard the news over the last few hours that they have also arrested a number of individuals in regards to the Swedish attack. A lot of these guys are part of the migrant gangs anyway. Let's go to the video we have from Sweden.
To af de anholdte i hvide DNA-dragter, der føres væk fra Københavns hovedbanegård. En tredje person blev anholdt et andet sted i København. Ifølge politiet er de alle 3 svenske statsborgere på mellem 15 og 20 år. En tredje person blev anholdt et andet sted i København. Ifølge politiet er de alle 3 svenske statsborgere.
So yeah, they obviously have arrested individuals. This was after the loud bang that was heard, the shotguns that were used. The police did find one gun and an empty bullet casing, but they did say, following the investigation this afternoon, that there might be other connections to other people, because this could potentially have been part of the gangs that include, obviously, inside some of the migrant camps that have been created over the last few years. There is going to be another investigation into the whole asylum system, especially in Sweden. The Swedish government have been under more pressure, obviously, over the last 5 years to step up their efforts. But having said that, there are still a lot of people in Sweden who are not being heard, and they're being ignored by the rest of the actual establishment, not necessarily just politicians, but everybody else. But the Swedish police, this is the update, last night barricaded the area surrounding the Israeli embassy in Stockholm after shots were fired at the building. Police officers found bullet holes in the embassy's windows. Weapons used by the attackers were found in the vicinity of the embassy, along with bullet casings. The Israeli Foreign Ministry have said that no one was hurt and all employees were safe. According to the police, no suspects were held at the time last night. The embassy had been closed to the public in recent weeks due to security concerns. Now, obviously, over the last few hours, the arrests have been made in Sweden as well as in Denmark. So we have to wait for more information about these so-called migrant gangs to find out whether they are what the media will call lone wolves, or are they part of any structured organization that is based in the West. Because of mass migration, we basically invited the likes of Al-Qaeda and everybody else, ISIS and everybody else, which were also at some point partly funded by the West, which is now backfiring massively. So that's on that issue. Obviously, in regards to everything else in terms of the Israeli embassies in other European countries, they are all under more security measures. Some of them are remain closed to the public, but we're not really getting any reassurance, especially in the UK, when it comes to the London Metropolitan Police and everybody else. We have to basically be vigilant, especially those who have Jewish backgrounds and happen to live in the West. Always be on standby. Let's get some reaction from you guys in the live chat. First one says, hello everybody, 669,000 subscribers, going up very fast, Maya. You're obviously doing something right. Thank you very much. Yes, we shall continue. Carl says, the idiocy of allowing Muslims to pour into the West. The issue is, if you're not vetting people's backgrounds, you can't really then complain about you not being able to keep the system stable. So when you have some of the politicians and some people in the police forces in Europe in general, whether it's Germany, France, or the UK, or anywhere, or Scandinavian countries, where they haven't really actually been vetting people's backgrounds, because most of the time they can't, because some of the countries that you're dealing with in North Africa and the Middle East, you cannot cooperate with their governments. That was the whole point of Donald Trump's the immigration ban from 6 specific countries. The media called it the Muslim ban, but it wasn't a Muslim ban, because it was 6 specific countries that happen to be Islamic that do not share any data on people's backgrounds with the US government or the European governments. So that was the whole point of that ban, because you have to find a better way to do this. And we have the other politicians, the liberal globalists, who invite everybody in. Angela Merkel was very proud to open the doors in 2015. We have hotels full of sleeper cells. So the interesting thing about sleeper cells is that I don't think people know the definition of it, because so on the one hand, you have a problem with some of the illegal migrants who are jihadists, but the sleeper cells, not all of them would look brown or Islamic, because the whole point of the sleeper cells are that they would look like other people. These are the people who have been paid and bought by the enemy a long time ago, just like how the Soviet Union did that with a number of people in the West. This always happens anyway. So the problem with the sleeper cells, the reason we call them sleeper cells, is that they are much harder to identify. It's not like, oh well, there's a brown guy with a backpack, that's basically a suspect. That it doesn't work that way. So we have bigger problems than, for example, just the illegal migrants in hotels or anywhere else. We already have that to deal with anyway. On top of that, we got those who we cannot even identify because they've been brainwashed or bought out or being used as assets, essentially. Just like how, for example, MI6 and Mossad and CIA have assets in Iran who are Iranian, but they're obviously cooperating with the Western side. The other side also works the other way around. Blue Sapphire says undoubtedly because the illegal migration, mostly men, by the way, there are tons of sleeper agents in both Europe and the US. So yeah, these are the jihadists that we're talking about. Yeah, absolutely. Sandra says that the Dutch policemen are refusing to protect the Jewish monuments and institutes such as synagogues and schools. Well, that's just disgusting, but it's not really that surprising anymore these days. Super chat time. Fat Cat, thank you very much, saying get yourself a lion before they run out. And Steve says, is Waltz friends with both shooters? I don't know if you guys watched the debate last night between JD Vance and Tim Waltz. Poor Tim was annihilated by Vance. It was hard to witness that. It was very one-sided. At times, Waltz just came across as just a very... it came across as so weak and just like innocent. But people forget, well, he's standing for a very, very strong and important position in the American government. So there's no point in feeling any sympathies. Carl says that we had Pakistani assets in Pakistan. Yeah, we still have them. Absolutely. AFC Manicure says, for what they have done and continue to do to this country, Labour and the Conservatives should be proscribed as terrorist organizations. That would be bad. And got another comment saying, Sweden is gone. Yeah, to be fair, for Sweden, it became a little bit too late about 10 years ago. And mostly because there was no plan for integration. There was no plan. So if you think there were problems in England, for example, when it comes to the isolated ghettos, in places like Germany and Sweden, this was happening way before the United Kingdom. Obviously, we all had the same problems about 30 years ago, 35 years ago and all that, but it got to a point, a boiling point, essentially, in both Germany and Sweden. In Germany, you already had cultural fights and multicultural fights back in the 90s. It started way too early. Sweden, it was already building up. In the 2000s, we can already see that small towns and villages and all those other urban areas have been completely taken over by a lot of people who do not actually work, and then everybody else complains. Obviously, they're going to complain about the fact that the public resources are being used on those who completely rigged the system. They didn't even want to be in the queue to legally enter the country, and they pretended to be political refugees. They are economic migrants pretending to be political refugees. Obviously, it's going to cause trouble. Laura says, great interview on GB News, Maya. I like Patrick Christis. He's a good journalist. Yes, that was last night. It was a lot. Yeah, it was. Oh, every day is like completely chaotic now. I don't even know what day it is. Yes, last night I was on GB News, which is a rare appearance I do, obviously. But Patrick is a good friend of mine, so I thought I would actually help him out with his show. He needed someone to talk about the sleeper cells and the threats from the Islamic Republic of Iran. Another super chat. If this happens here, I can't wait to see how the SMS is that the mainstream? Is that supposed to be the mainstream media? The government and the police spin their lies. And Vinny, oh by the way, Vinny King. Look at the profile picture. The bulldog. It's this. Stolen the bulldog. Love that, Vinny. Saying, I've just finished reading The Enemy of the State. Your story would be a great read. Any plans for the making of Maya? Oh, well. And the United Kingdom sweatshirt has arrived. Well, good. That's it. This is about our merchandise, by the way. Yeah, so a lot of people actually have approached in recent times to ask about me writing the whole story about myself and my journey and my views and everything else. There's no time. That's the problem. When am I going to find the time to start writing? Although I do say that, but I spend a lot of time reading. So if I can read, I'm sure I can find time to write as well. And one day, hopefully, we could have the book of Mayerism, a new right-wing ideology. We're gonna make it a thing. We're gonna turn it. Mayerism is now the new ideology, ladies and gentlemen. Hashtag Mayerism. Another super chat. According to CNN, J.D. Vance was the biggest porcupine teller in the debate. Because CNN, it was brilliant because the moderators last night's debate between Vance and Walz, they were only fact-checking Vance. And then he called them out. They said, so you seem to only be fact-checking me, so let me fact-check the fact-checkers. It was brilliant. He did really well, and the media are having a meltdown. Time to paint a red cross on your shield. The Crusades are here. Mark says, Sweden used to be one of my want-to-go destinations. Not anymore, thanks to how the police changed it. Really? With all due respect to the Swedes watching this, of all the countries in the wider Scandinavian area, even in the 80s and 90s, the problem with Sweden was economic policies. Massive high taxes and restrictions. So much, yet free education and higher education. So a lot of people basically went to Sweden, studied for free at university in the 80s and 90s. Then they all came to the UK or moved to the US to become dentists or whatever they wanted to do, because starting their own business in Sweden was so difficult. Denmark, on the other hand, and relatively Norway, chose a different approach. And they did quite well. And they still continue to do well. Sweden then, after the 90s, almost went bankrupt, just like Germany. Then they decided to throw the whole book out, saying, oh, maybe we should become a little bit more capitalistic. Since then, yes, Sweden has been slightly more pro-free market, which has been good. And yes, high income tax and everything else, but it's still a little bit restrictive. There's a lot of good things about Sweden, obviously, and Denmark and other places, but the issue is not necessarily high income tax, because it works for the culture, although the culture is now being destroyed by mass migration, but the problem has always been more business restrictions, which again, Norway and Denmark were always resisting. Anyway, let's have a look. Do we have any more? Yeah, okay, so that's it. So we'll keep you guys posted. We have to take a break. We're going to come back. There's a couple of other short videos, but then later on, in about an hour or so, we have to talk about what's been going on in the Middle East, because the Israelis are hitting back massively at Islamists. And then obviously over the next few days, we're going to hear more from the Islamic Republic of Iran. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maya Tusi, and we are the media.